Everybody. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Middleborough School Committee meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. The first order of business tonight is we're going to try to get back to a little normalcy, and so our student rep is back. So I will ask Melanie to bring up Natalia. Natalia, how are you, my friend?
Sorry. Good.
No problem. Good, thank you. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
And so I'll turn it over to you, Natalia, so you can give your student rep report.
Okay, thank you. For the MECS report, things are going well at the MEC. Students have been very good in regard to wearing masks and keeping space. These students don't really know anything different, so the MEC staff has been able to train them in this new learning environment. The MEC held their virtual open house last night and have plans for a virtual parent-teacher conference night to be scheduled for a couple weeks down the road. The kids continue to do well with wearing masks and social distancing, including at recess and lunch times. The teachers really enjoy having students face-to-face and continue to work out the issues with remote learning. They have been focusing on building stamina when it comes to online learning. For the MKG's update, things are going well at MKG. They have established their routines and schedules are working out well. The students are excited to be learning and sharing their work both in person as well as remotely. Their focus word of the month is respect. The students have been reading and writing about how to demonstrate being respectful. For the HBB's update, everything is going well. After spending the first few weeks adjusting, they are now working to continue many of their usual traditions. This year, the HBB is disappointed as they will not be able to host the Harvest Big Blast, but they are still planning on hosting a virtual jack-o'-lantern contest. All participants will receive a bag of goodies, and they will have a bunch of additional prizes. Even adults are welcome to participate, and they will have prizes for them too. All information on how to participate can be found on our most recent post and the PTA website. They had a successful visit from Terry Murray, the inventor mentor, on October 19th and 22nd. The students were able to work with Terry as they performed hands-on experiments with rocket launchers and battery-powered bubble makers. The efforts of keeping these experiments sanitized were worth it. The kids had an amazing time. All of the remote students will be participating in a specially designed remote presentation soon, and they will have individual kits so that all of the remote students can have the hands-on opportunity as well. Since the school year has started, they have come up with a new way for students to use the Husky Haven store, as well as our character word of the month, the positive office referrals. Overall, HBB is working to ensure that kids have fun this year and continue to do well. For NMS, overall, the Nichols Middle School has been the opening of the Nichols Middle School has been very successful. Students are settling into their routines and expectations under the new guidelines. As a school, NMS would like to thank everyone for their patience and support as they continue to navigate some of the nuances to hybrid and virtual learning. And a thank you to the NMS faculty and staff for their flexibility and cooperation in working to get to school every single day. They love seeing their students each day. For MHS, last week, October 14th, MHS was successful in hosting an SAT exam for the class of 2021. Last Friday, October 16th, progress reports for quarter one were posted on Aspen. Last night, the 21st, and tonight, the 22nd, MHS hosted virtual parent-teacher conferences. Next week, MHS Student Council is hosting the first Spirit Week of the year. Whether remote or in person, all students are encouraged to participate. Monday, the 26th, is Pajama Day. Tuesday is Hawaiian Day. Wednesday is Flannel Day. Thursday is Out of This World Day. Friday is Spirit Day. And Saturday, the 31st, is Costume Day. And lastly, a virtual college fair is coming up on November 8th for the class of 2021 and 2022. Thank you.
Natalia, thank you very much for that report. The question I have for you is, could you talk a little about your own experience and how it's been going for you?
It's definitely been a big transition. I personally like being in person better just for the courses that I have, for especially my science classes. But I think that everyone is adapting, everyone's getting used to it. The mask breaks help so much, obviously. I think everyone now has gotten used to like the one-way hallways and the distancing in the classrooms and in the lunchroom. The lunchroom took a lot to get used to, but now it's all good and it's going very well.
Can you talk to us a little about what a mask break is like?
It depends on the teacher, but so that depends on like how long the mask break is, but it's usually it takes extra long having to go through the one-way hallways because you have to like go up and down floors to get your way out and back in. But it's usually like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's just spread out either outside or if it's like bad weather in the bus lobby where there's a bunch of space so everyone can stay 6 feet apart and take their masks off.
And I guess the other question I have for you, is it hard being in school, going to school, and every morning that you walk in, or the times when you have rooms that look at it, looking at the new high school, wondering what it's going to like to be moved into there?
Yes. Everyone I think is very excited, like especially now that there's sports games on the field, like everyone's antsy to get into the new school, but I know everyone's very excited.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Does anyone else have questions for Natalia? Mr. Oakley.
So it's kind of related to what Mr. Young said, but is there anything that you as a student who's experiencing school every day want us to know or think we should know that we might not know already about what your experience is like?
I'm not sure. For me, it's going very well. Everyone that I've talked to, it's going very well. I haven't heard any complaints. I think everyone's just accepted that this is the new normal. There's nothing we can do about it. So I feel like it's just going well. People are adapting, and it's good.
Great. Thanks.
Thanks, Natalia. Anyone else have any questions for Natalia? Natalia, thank you very much. I appreciate it. My dog is just jumping around in front of me. I hope, I'm glad that you're back, Natalia, because at least in my mind, it feels a little like we're back to somewhat normal, although we're still in this, this remote area part. But I want to thank you, and we look forward to your other reports from here on in.
No problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Natalia. You take care. Next, I'm going to bring in the two union co-presidents, Sam and Kate, who, just so everyone knows, the superintendent and I had a great meeting with about an hour prior to this. We sat down and had some discussion, and we're going to keep that up. But I just want to invite you two and turn the microphone over to you.
Good evening. So at the high school, we just finished the second day of 2 for parent-teacher conferences. Some teachers have been booked straight through the whole time, and there are some teachers out there that I heard that are really enjoying having conferences virtually rather than in person. Progress notes for quarter 1 came out last week, as the end of quarter 1 is right around the corner, November 17th. Something to look forward to. Overall, just using a quote from one of my good friends, we are doing the best we can with what we have in the present moment. We just need to remain patient, take deep breaths. We're going to get through it together. We're all fatigued. Students are working and teaching is happening. So we just need to keep moving on. Kate?
Thank you. Let's see. New normal, right? That's what we're dealing with. And it is weird. It's weird to be in the building when so few people are there. It's also weird to be sitting at my kitchen table. I never thought I would install a whiteboard on my kitchen wall, but there it is. So let's see what's going on. some exciting news is that our Thanksgiving meal drive is underway, and Middleborough High School's own Bill Breen came up with this amazing idea and really pushed it right through the Middleborough Education Association, and also spoke with Brian, getting his approval of it. It's a meal drive for our local families, and I'm just going to read you the little blurb that I believe Zach Botello wrote for us. It says, in an effort to help out some Middleborough Public School students and their families and ensure that they all have a wonderful Thanksgiving dinner this November, the Middleborough Education Association is launching a GoFundMe fundraising campaign to purchase grocery gift cards. This is a totally voluntary drive for the Middleborough Education Association membership and our school community and other community members. We are planning to purchase $25 gift cards from our local supermarkets for families to help them buy their holiday dinners. And with the administration's help, we will they will help us figure out who to distribute these cards to, the families that are in need for this. And we hope to encourage as many people to sponsor a family for a $25 donation, but any donation is accepted. I've seen some good ones on there. We're over $600 in donations. We have a goal, I think it was $2,500 that Mr. Breen decided that we could do, and we can make a lot of people's Thanksgiving a lot happier if we can do this. So please contact Bill Breen at the high school, look on Facebook for the GoFundMe page, and consider volunteering some of your money for this great cause. Other things going on, I know schools are starting to get their parent-teacher conferences going. Ours are not until the the second full week of November, so that's coming up at the elementary level. Natalia did a great job of talking about some of the great things that are going on at the elementary level. We're trying to keep things as normal as we can. I know musical instruments were distributed this week. I had 5 or 6 kids in my 5th grade class get their instruments, and then as those instruments were being delivered, 2 or 3 other kids said, wait a minute, I want to do it too. So the music teacher was sending out another email, and I believe they're doing them at home. I think that's the plan. Natalia also talked about the Inventor Mentor, and he did a great job. My class got to go on Tuesday, and the other group went today, although we had a little bee infestation, so we had to shut it down a little early, and the last group is going to have him on campus next week. He was amazing. So much fun. The kids had so much fun. And the bubbles, what a great idea. He did a lot of things with bubbles, and then their hands were all covered with bubbles, so the cleaning was automatically done right there. And that's all I really have for the rest of the report. I think that's about it.
Thanks to you both. Does any school committee members have any questions for Kate or Sam? Meg.
Can we share the link on the district page?
We can.
Yes. Sam is probably better at doing that than I am, or else we'll ask Mr. Breen to do that. We have the GoFundMe page, so I'll see how we can get that up there. That'd be great. Thank you. And I know that was one of his conversations with Brian, was to see if you guys also wanted to participate with us, and then we'll put out a card from all of the Middleborough educators, because we're all educators of our students. So thank you. Yes, that would be a great idea.
That's fantastic. Any other questions? Teresa.
Just from a parent perspective, I actually really enjoyed the virtual parent-teacher conference myself. It was just nice. It was a full 10 minutes of just great conversation. I didn't feel like there were any distractions for us, and I certainly appreciated the teachers' time, but I felt like I got a lot more out of it than maybe in the past. So I kind of thought it was a great addition this year.
Great. Anybody else? Sam and Kate, thank you very much. As I said before, I really appreciated our conversation today and look forward to those continued conversations. So thanks.
Thank you.
Now I will move to our next agenda item, which is comments or from the school committee members. Anybody have anything they wish to bring up? Ms. Farley, go right ahead.
Just sort of a local plug. My son happens to be a part of it, so I know a little bit about it, but there's a ghost drive at the Parks Department. It was actually tonight from 6 to 8, and then tomorrow 6 to 9 and Saturday 6 to 9. And it's it looks like a tourism committee type project, and it's $10 per car, and then people can drive through down at the Parks Department. So my son's volunteering his time, so I wanted to kind of give a shout out to that, and it sounds like they put a lot of work into it, so people should try to get there this weekend if they can.
Fantastic. Other comments from anybody else? So I just want to bring up one thing, which is since our next meeting won't happen till November 12th, I do wish to remind everybody November 3rd is Election Day, and please get out and vote. No matter who you want to vote for, it's important. And obviously school will be in professional development mode that day, but it's also important for kids to see parents vote. And I think that's very important. Anybody else? Then seeing no one with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Lynch for the superintendent's report.
Did you just have to rub that in? You just had to rub that in?
I think you're muted, Brian.
You're muted, Brian. Sorry.
I was off stage and then I was muted, so here I am. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, Brian. We're all muted ourselves. So.
All right, thank you. I want to bring you up to date on COVID-19, some things that are going on in the schools. As you know, as the community knows, the school community knows, we had another member of the Nichols Middle School community test positive for COVID. We had determined that there were 0 contact tracings in the school. It was from an outside source. The person was in a remote mode, so it was not, there was no direct exposure to anybody in the school, anyone in the school, and no close contacts, which is obviously defined as 6 feet, within 6 feet for 15 consecutive minutes. So that gets reported to the state, which I've done in each case. I call the state and let them know what's going on in our town, and then they report out in a sort of a summative way to the entire state. I want to continue on and talk about the fact that we'll soon at the elementary and middle school and high school level start talking about the transition as we go from term to term and how we might be affected by different things going on. One being maybe the desire for people who are remote to come into school. And secondly, the fact that Middleborough has just been put into the red metric in terms of the state diagnosis or the state determination with regard to COVID. That just happened after 4 o'clock this afternoon. That news had come out of the town manager's office, had been relayed to me a little bit earlier in the day. This doesn't automatically kick in anything with regard to the schools. There have been discussions in the past about when we go red, we need to go fully remote. We don't have to do that. In 3 weeks, if the numbers are still the same, then we take a closer look. We have conversations with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. We have conversations with you folks, and we have discussions about where we're at. We have made determinations so far that the school, we have not had any school spreading. The COVID has not been in schools in pods or worked around. It's just been individual cases where the people have received or have contracted the virus from an outside source. So again, the town is now red. You'll see it on the map. It'll be in the Globe tomorrow. It'll be in the Herald tomorrow, and be online tomorrow. And I don't want people to overreact in terms of the schools. I think we need to react, certainly, and react in a proactive way and continue to social distance and wash your hands and be alert to everything that's going on in the community in terms of the COVID or potential for COVID spread. But I do think we need to not sort of overreact to this red demarcation. Again, it's been mentioned a couple of times. I wanted to say that we're starting to trying to get into that sort of routine, which is so important for everyone. It's important for kids. It's important for teachers. It's important for everyone in the school. And I think open houses, and I think that parent-teacher conferences, and I think things such as that, and some of the things that are going on in the schools and some of the enrichment programs that will continue. I think those are important, and they need to continue to be important. They opted to go, we mentioned this little scientist that came into Berkeley, and they opted to go outside with this, which was a perfectly good idea, until we had a bright, sunny, beautiful day, and the bees woke up again and decided they were looking for floral prints instead of flowers because they couldn't find any. So we had an issue with some bees at the complex today out behind because of the beautiful sunny day. We've been fortunate to have some very nice weather this September and October. when we first were designing the schools for school reopening, we had thoughts about some of those traditional September and October weeks that we've had, early October, where we've had sweltering heat and humidity. We didn't really experience that this year, so that's been a real positive moving forward. So all in all, in terms of COVID-19 updates, we continue to be vigilant. We continue to live by state guidelines and local guidelines, continue to work with our local health department, continue to work with Paula Magnesco, our coordinator of nursing, and address situations as they are necessary. And we'll continue to do so. And I would certainly answer any questions that any of the committee members might have with regard to our current status and COVID-19.
Brian, just to bring up 2 points that have come out recently that I think the school committee should be made aware of. First, that DESE, I believe starting next week or maybe even starting Friday, will have a determination on numbers if there is a cluster at a particular place. So, for example, if a particular nursing home has a large number of residents who have COVID, it'll be shown in that way, correct?
Yeah, it'll be a color metric, will be the same, but there'll be an asterisk next to it that will indicate how many individuals at a particular skilled nursing facility or the like, whether it be Bridgewater with the prison or whatever, whoever it might be, whatever community. It'll be a demarcation sort of to say, this is not a school spread situation, or it is, you know. If 10 cases originated at a certain school, then we will have addressed it by then, certainly, and those students will be home. So, but yeah, so that's how they're going to address it, Mr. Chairman. You're correct.
And the second piece is both you and I received a letter from the commissioner's office, and the commissioner's office outlined to school committees a point, which is under no circumstances can school committees make a decision about going entirely remote without consulting DESE or using the data on a 3-week cycle, or they would be immediately subject to a DESE audit. Am I incorrect in that?
That was exactly what was stated. The school committee would be subject to a special audit on the part of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, which I'm not sure. I'd have to get a definition of that. And I think in our next commissioners meeting, I can ask that in the chat room and just say, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean you're going to come in and check all our Title I and our Title II and our Title IIA and our Title IV? And are you going to check our operation? But is it a financial audit, or is it an audit of minutes of the meetings, or what, you know? So we need an answer on that. It was kind of a sort of a general statement that was made, almost, if you will, a little bit of a veiled threat. I guess that was probably your sense too, Rich. But
yeah.
I'm not
I
sure.
like threats, as you know, Brian. Threats are very exciting to me, especially when I don't understand how an audit would threaten me in any way, shape, or form, since we already have audits all the time here at the school. So,
yeah, we do. So, yeah. Okay. If not, I will certainly move on unless anybody has any other questions on the with regard to COVID-19.
Mr. Rowe.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Lynch, I know it's unfortunate we've had some cases in our school community, but the good thing seems to be that the contact is all outside of school, correct? There's no school to school transmission. It's not teacher to student, student to student, or anything like that.
It's coming from what we've seen. Is coming from to a family gathering and a very small wedding and some things like that are occurring on the weekends. That on a Wednesday night, some will become symptomatic, and it's do not come into school. And then we kick in the contact tracing, and if the person might be from another town, that town contacts our Department of Public Health, and it might be a faculty member from another town. So that all kicks in, and so far the contact tracing, I think, has been productive. And the Department of Public Health nurse came in and made an evaluation, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, of the Nichols cafeteria, and changed the entire cafeteria around. We had plastic shields in between every student, and she said you need the air to flow better and move. So we, instead of the tables, we brought desks in, individual desks, and spread them out. So we've made changes as a result of recommendations that have been made, and we'll continue to do so. So that's all we can do, is work together in a positive way, because it's not going to go away for a while, and we have to deal with it. And as situations arise, we need to deal with them head on.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. And looking at other schools and ones that, there are 3 teachers on this board with me, we see this it's a community spread disease. It's not just a school spread disease. And it's awesome to see the people in the community, you know, wearing masks, being socially distanced at baseball games, and kind of taking the precautions to stop it from coming into the schools and becoming a problem.
Yeah.
Brian, we had one question that came through the chat, and that was about when we're making decisions on remote versus hybrid for our children, we were told it would be for a full term at a time. Do we know if the cohorts will continue as they are for second term?
We are going to, like I think I stated that in my report, that we are going to work as a group of administrators in the next week or so to start making those determinations on room and if we can do it, and the budget and things such as that, because our setup right now works for what we have. But if the balance shifts a good deal, we might have to look at perhaps hiring additional faculty members and things like that. So there'll be a balance. You know, this red rating comes up that might perhaps keep more students home. It might put more students out remote. But then again, with the success of the hybrid model, there are kids that are remote that might want to come in. So it's an interesting balance. We really are bursting at the seams in some of the classes at Nichols Middle School. So we'd have to look at that and develop some type of a hybrid team if we needed to, and et cetera. So an additional hybrid team. So there are certainly situations that will bear out that we'll have to look at, and we'll talk about it at school committee, because we're going to have to talk about it in terms of having a lottery for open positions that we might have and things such as that. And that's unfortunately the case we're at right now, but that's a conversation that we're just starting, and we need to continue to continue it, excuse me. And we'll be doing that in the next week or a week and a half, 2 weeks. So,
and just to answer other questions that are out there, there will still be a full remote option, Brian, because there has to be.
Absolutely. There'll continue to be a fully remote option. And as students are identified as high needs and high risk, that they'll be brought into school if we can. If, you know, a student that might move into to town with an ELL issue, with a foreign language coming, I mean, would bring that student in full time. And there's some opportunities for that high risk population and high needs population as defined by IEPs and the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed. But we'll continue to have the same cohorts and until such time as things change drastically. And I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it happens in the other way, in the other direction. But right now, at this point, we'll continue with the cohorts that we have.
And the other piece about, has there been any discussion about bringing students back to full 5-day? We can't, because our requirements make it so that we can currently.
Yeah, we can't do that yet. We just don't have the transportation for that. Number one, that's a huge one. And now we have a setup where we have both hybrid and remote. We have an online learning academy that was set up with our own teachers. So that would be something that would have to be done wholesale. It would have to be done completely by the district. We're either all in or all out, or cohorts.
Thank you. So does any other member have any questions for the superintendent? Mr. Rupp.
This question comes from just thinking about it. I know before we discussed about switching, like a student can move from, fully remote to back to hybrid, or hybrid to fully remote at the time the terms end. Are they posted anywhere that parents can go find, or is there a deadline you would like to know if a parent wants to switch their student from cohort, like from hybrid to remote?
I think that we have the individual school calendars probably have those. I hope it's not on our district calendar. So at the high school, it's halfway through the year. So would have to, when we decide what we're going to do, and come to you and get a vote, and then we'll go forward with the plan. I think we're still formulating the plan right now, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions? Seeing no one, Brian, then I'll ask you to move on with your report.
Sure. Each year we do have a representative or representatives from the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, this tonight represented by Mrs. Carolyn Lyons, to give sort of an update on what's going on with CPAC and where they're at for the year, and a sort of a summary of what happened last year. And we'd invite her into the meeting at this time. There she is. Hi, Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
Hi there. So I'm here tonight to talk about our CPAC. CPAC stands for Special Education Parent Advisory Council. And just to give you an update on the 1920 school year. So as the year began, the board had new leadership, and there were some organizational changes that needed to be done, and was not a small amount of work. I'm pleased to tell you that on the whole, CPAC had a very positive year with some really big highlights, and it's a shame that we ended the year the way we did. But let me kind of back up and give you a bit of an overview of how the year went. Over the fall, there was an event where speakers came in. It was called the Shut Up Sisters event, which included not just the speakers, but a raffle that yielded a significant profit for CPAC. It was a very successful event. It was very well attended. There were over 50 attendees. And what CPAC did with those funds was actually put it right back into the community and students that attend Middleborough Public Schools. In particular, there were some particular items of need that families couldn't provide on their own. One such item is a portable oxygen conversion backpack, which really serves to give a small child some freedom on a playground and with peers who otherwise is attached to a corded oxygen tank. So if you can think about that for a minute and what that represents to a family here in our community, it's no small thing. They also spent money on technology such as iPads with AAC programming, which is augmentative and alternative communication, which again helps a student who is experiencing difficulty with language to have their voice heard. Both donations are really profoundly impactful for individual families, and it's especially nice that our own families were instrumental in raising those funds and then funneling them back into the community. So aside from the fundraising event that they had over the fall, CPAC all year really acted as a very critical consultative body with the special education department. There were several meetings. There's basically monthly meetings, and there were opportunities to meet with special education coordinators, with our new behavioral department. Sarah Hickey, the Director of Business and Finance, came to speak about budgeting, and specifically special education budgeting. And then most importantly, CPAC was influential in our plan for reopening. This is really what is embodied in the statute that creates CPACs in every single town. Yes, they're a group for families and a resource for families, but they're also a consultative body with the administration of the public school system. And this was extremely successful over the year, working together with a group that represents our families that are eligible for special education. Over the winter, of course, and into March and April, there were several events planned. A parent information night with kind of an informational video about kids called Intelligent Minds, and a special someone dance. And both of these events were canceled, along with two additional fundraisers that occur each spring. And I know that put a damper on the year, but it would truly be a misstatement to look back on the year and not recall the very tremendous growth this group experienced. We had greater numbers of attendance over the year than in all of my time with Middleborough. Very well attended meetings, and actually during the COVID shutdown, their group switched right into virtual meetings. And even though it's clunky at times, it's allowed for greater parent participation. So what I wanted to do was share my screen, because there is a calendar of events, and I'm going to try to do that now. There's a calendar of events that went home in a mailing that I sent. And it lists all the speakers and events that CPAC will be running in the year to come. So that includes, hopefully you can now see my screen. This gives a list of all the meetings. We already had a meeting in September and the meeting in October. But the upcoming November meeting, CPAC is looking to secure a speaker, particularly on the topic of trauma. And right now, with what our families are experiencing, that's particularly timely, and I think would have a lot of families out there watching tonight and otherwise consider tuning in. Additionally, there are plans, which is not noted in this schedule of meetings, there are plans underway to host a paint night virtually this December. So more information will be forthcoming on that. Hopefully you saw my screen and I can stop sharing it at this point. But as families, you'll get emails from me that push out messages from our CPAC to remind you of when meetings occur, how you can get involved, and any information that they share, we share out with you through our Blackboard communication system, through email and text. So make sure your Aspen information is current and hopefully you will receive it. So that was really the summary of our year with CPAC. I look forward to another successful year and welcome any questions you might have.
Thank you, Carolyn. And you were able to share it. We all did see it, and I would encourage school committee members to attend because most of the CPAC events have been really excellent, the ones I've attended over the past. So I would. Does anyone have any questions for Carolyn? Seeing no one, well, thank you, Carolyn. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all the hard work you're doing.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone.
Brian, before you move on, I have one other question that came up, if it's okay.
Sure.
Can parents that switch to homeschooling come back?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And you answered the question rather easily.
I mean, that's something they do voluntarily.
Okay.
And I would defer to Melanie Gates, who takes care of that population, on that. Maybe she can speak to it at the beginning of her little piece next about exactly what the law says on that. I'm not familiar if there is a law that would prevent it. So as far as I'm concerned, Dr. Gates, I know you're there. I see you. Is there a law that would prevent a family from leaving homeschooling and coming back to the public schools? I don't think there is.
You are correct, Superintendent Lynch. There's no law preventing our homeschool families from re-enrolling into the Middleborough Public Schools. Any homeschool family would need to re-enroll even if you were a previous Middleborough Public School student, because when you enter into homeschooling, you are unenrolled and identified in a homeschool status. So if you do wish to transfer from homeschooling back into our lovely schools, please visit our website under the Student and Families top tab for our student registration tab and follow the directions that are there, which is exciting because it's our new online student registration platform, which is integrated directly in with Aspen. But the short answer is yes, they can certainly re-enroll.
Melanie, just a quick question related to that. Is there a delay at all? So, should parents expect, that if they go online, can they bring their child the next day, or is it something they need to wait for confirmation from us from?
It's going to have to wait for confirmation based upon the receipt of all of the required documentation to enroll. So if it was a student who was recently with us, we probably have a lot of the records on file still. But, it can't be, immediately from one day to the next in all instances. So it would depend upon the paperwork that is received from the families.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, next on my report is a new position, computer technician, and this is a proposal being brought forward by myself and Dr. Gates this evening, based simply on need. We have unusual circumstances this year which have brought us to the point where the need for people that are in the know with regards to technology are hard to find. And right now in our district, we have a hard-working group of people, but they're working as hard as they can, and they're just running out of time and running out of hours in the day. And we're just discovering that, especially with a very large order due in, that we're in a point where we're going to need some extra help in the computer department, the technology department. I would explain to you folks that are budget conscious. Sarah Hickey, our budget director, had come to me at the beginning of the year and said that when we switched Sean Siciliano over to the tech department, we did not take him out of his line item on the other budget. So we do have a salary position or a salary account that is not being used right now. And certainly at this point in the year, it would not negatively impact the budget because the money's already been approved. So I would give you that background before Melanie. Dr. Gates goes a little further into the why, I guess. So I would hand it over to Dr. Gates in terms of the rationale for this additional computer technician. And if you have any questions, you can certainly ask the both of us after her little piece here. Dr. Gates.
Thank you, Superintendent Lynch and school committee members. I'm really appreciative of the thoughtfulness of Mrs. Hickey in allowing us to repurpose these funds to support the tech department. Even the pandemic in and of itself and the requirements it has for the amount of break fix that we're doing with equipment, the amount of reconfiguring that we are doing with networks, because we are adding a lot of new tools and applications into our system. You couple that with, we're also preparing to open a new high school where the majority of the systems within that high school are running through technology. We need to be able to free up our network manager more so from the break fix work that is going on in the tech department to the higher level work that really only Mr. Michael Mills can do within the department. So the addition of this position is certainly helping us in the here and the now, but it's also needed to help us in the future. We are preparing to be a one-to-one district from preschool really through kindergarten, through 12th grade, excuse me. We have been one-to-one from 6 through 12 through the duration of Superintendent Lynch's tenure. And even in that time period, a lot of the work that the tech department has done has been more on the break fix aspect versus being proactive with maintenance to avoid some of the breakage. And it's all just due to the amount of hours in the day and the amount of work that can be done within them. The department has been working extremely hard, not just during this pandemic, but they've always worked hard to deliver top quality service to our faculty, staff, students, and families. And with the move to becoming one-to-one across the district, it's really imperative that we add another technician position. Some of the industry standard around the ratio of technician to devices ranges from anywhere from one technician for every 250 devices to as low as one technician for every 150 devices. The low end of that is related to the complexity of the systems that you're operating. How many different models of devices are in play? What are the operating systems of those devices? And we actually do have a pretty complex system here. We have Chromebooks, we have Windows tablets, we work with Acers, we work with Lenovo's, we have Macs, we have Android tablets. We have desktop stations. There is quite a mix of technology in our district, which is wonderful, but the complexity does add to the layers of time needed to maneuver through it in order to deliver the service that's needed. So this position is needed for the here and the now, but I also think it's appropriate for the future of the Middleborough Public Schools, since we will be one-to-one, not just for the pandemic, but for the foreseeable future.
I think you're muted.
I would turn this back over to you, Mr. Chair, and any questions that any committee member might have about this position and the need for it.
So I do want to say a couple of things, having been here the longest. And Melanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But given that this has been unlike other years, even in the setup over the summer, in the past, for example, with the summer when we've gotten new computers and things like that in, we have hired, for example, college kids from the summer to come in and do some of the setup work and pieces like that we were unable to do this year, primarily because we haven't gotten equipment in and just haven't been able to based on COVID situations. Correct, Melanie?
That's correct, Chairman Young. We've had college students come and help. We've had the opportunity to hire some additional help beyond that. When we had our first, I believe it was the first big purchase of Chromebooks, when Superintendent Lynch brought us to being a one-to-one district, 6 through 12. So we did definitely brought on extra hands for that. There was one thing I also neglected to insert into the thought process here, and that's MCAS. That is still going on as of today. It is going to start, I believe, on January 17th at the high school, and it will be computer-based for any 11th and 12th graders who still need to meet the competency determination, which will pretty much be all of our 11th graders since they did not take ELA and mathematics MCAS in the spring. So, we have coming all at once between the end of November and February. The tech department is dealing with the normal volume of work that we have had, which is immense. We've had the largest number really of school due tickets that we have seen in quite some time. So we're dealing with the break fix. We're dealing with some of the technical support that needs to happen. We're still issuing devices and hotspots. When those roughly 2,500 devices come in, we need to stop and prepare those devices to be utilized in the district. We also have simultaneous to this all of the work for the new high school, which in the new high school, we're putting in 70 flat panel screens, and each one of those flat panels has to have a PC insert that is imaged for the flat screen, and it actually has to be imaged while it's in the flat screen, and we only have one flat screen to do it. So we're going to be imaging those one at a time. So it's laborious, it's time consuming, but it's the convergence of so many different technological initiatives coupled with just the support that we need to give. And, we're definitely in high demand.
And Melanie, one other question I had, if I can, before you, Rich, is that since we're hiring a new position, is there a possibility with this new position that we could set up even, let's say, an hour where, for example, remote parents and or students could call in and talk to somebody if they're having issues with computer?
We currently have a solution for that. We have a Google form that is posted on the website that families can fill out with the issues that they're having. So it's like an external ticketing system that we've kind of cobbled together. So we're still trying to work through those tickets while working for the internal tickets, while also dealing with the work outside of those tickets. So we do have a mechanism for that, but we can certainly have a discussion within the tech department about that idea, because I don't like to rule out ideas unless we've had an opportunity to discuss them and vet them as a team. So I can certainly have that conversation and follow up if needed.
And the only reason I mention it, Melanie, is I've heard from a couple of people who sort of who understand the procedure, but they don't feel they need to put in a ticket. Maybe they need to ask a 5-second question and don't want to add to the tech department. It would rather be if they could just have a 5-second conversation and ask a question, that kind of thing. That's all I was thinking of.
No, certainly, but all ideas need to be considered, because you put that one idea down, and I can bring it to the department, and they might have another idea to put with it that makes it an even better solution. So we'll certainly explore that.
Thank you. And Mr. Oakley, I know you had your hand up, so go right ahead.
I'm going to defer to Teresa. I think I saw hers
Okay,
up
Teresa,
first.
go right ahead.
Thanks. No big deal. Thanks, Mr. Oakley. So I just want to make sure I'm clear here. This looks like you are looking to add a position that is not a temporary position. It is to help now with COVID, but it is also moving forward going to be a permanent position that the hope would be, budgeting wise, we would be able to just continue to budget that in for the years to come.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd like to continue. Right now, we didn't have the money in this year's budget. We know it was, for those of you who were part of the process, it was an extremely tight year budget-wise. We thought we'd be in a lot worse situation. We did have a little bit of wiggle room at the end of last year with some transportation money and things like that we're able to free up some operational money. So, but this position just happened to be there, and it was duplicitous. It was sort of budgeted in two places at the same time, and I'm really surprised that we didn't catch it beforehand, because between Greg Rowe and Rich Young and myself and Sarah Hickey and Melanie was part of it, and everybody else kind of sort of knocking their heads together trying to find a penny or a dime here and there, that we didn't see it. But unfortunately, the money is there in the budget. It's not going to negatively impact our budget this year. But for next year, we'd have to take a serious look to see if we can afford it. and look at other positions. And if this is a priority, if this becomes a position that is a priority, then something else may have to suffer as a result. So in terms of the sort of the cutting block, if you will, when it comes down to budget time. I hope that answers your question, Teresa.
Absolutely. It sounds like a little bit like divine intervention to me, to be honest.
Yeah, well, it could have happened at a better time. That's for sure.
Exactly. So no, that's great. Thank you. That clears it up.
Yep.
Mr. Oakley, go ahead. But one thing I want to mention to everybody too, we haven't reminded everybody in a while, so I'll remind you all now. When we opened the new high school, we sort of, because we're opening the new high school in February, we made budgetary pieces going forward for this small portion of the year. But starting next year, the high school will need 2 additional positions. One is the person to run the makerspace, and the second is a piece to deal with the landscaping issues. So I don't want to take that off the table, and I want to make sure people are aware of that too. So with that, Mr. Oakley, you have the floor.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Dr. Gates, first of all, it sounds like a good problem to have, because we're, like you mentioned, we're essentially becoming a one-to-one district, which is an awesome achievement, I think. But obviously, under these circumstances, it's a little tainted. But what I wondered, I had 2 questions, and the first question was, this particular position is especially needed because of the large purchase of devices that we're pulling in to help with the current situation. And I wondered, because of that, does that allow us to try to claim any COVID money from the county or the state to at least help to offset some of those costs for maybe year one, if it is a permanent position?
I could answer that, Rich. We would certainly do that.
Okay.
This would certainly be part of this plan for this year, because this is definitely COVID related.
Gotcha.
Right
Thank
now.
you.
Yep.
But Brian, I think we really need to make mention of this to everybody too. The COVID money that we currently have for Plymouth County is for a period in time that is running out soon.
Yeah.
So there is no, for example, there is no COVID money going past into next calendar year in January. So I think that's important to note.
Absolutely.
So, and that's why, the whole conversation that they're having right now at the federal level about COVID relief, there are pieces that would add to the schools going into next year, which we currently do not have. So I just want to bring that up and make sure everyone's aware of that. So thank you.
It's a valid point, Mr. Chair, and one worth noting for sure. So that is the sort of the rationale, and really it comes down to, as far as I'm concerned, it would come down to a school committee vote, because it is an additional position.
Any other questions?
Sorry,
I just wanted to ask my second question, and it's also for Dr. Gates. How many folks do we have right now in the tech department that would be performing a similar function as this new position?
Currently, we have 2.5 technicians. We have 1 dedicated to the high school and 1 dedicated to the middle school. And we have a part-time position that works as best as he can to support the elementary school. We do flex the technicians around from building to building as needed. But that is the primary setup. And one thing that I did neglect to mention, so my apologies, what we're looking for in this position is something a little bit different than our current technicians, and this is not against them whatsoever, but technician support has different tiers to it. And right now, we're primarily providing a tier 1 tech support, which is predominantly the break fix on hardware by our current technicians. Tier 2 support is typically software applications, and that pulls our network manager away from his work of being able to monitor and perform maintenance on the network. So within the job descriptions, there's some subtle changes between what our typical description has been. We're looking for 5 years of industry experience, as well as some familiarity with Active Directory and Google Admin Console. So not looking to hire someone in at a complete entry level. This will help us vary the level of support that the technicians can provide which will allow Mike Mills to do the high level work that, again, only he is able to do in the district currently. And I hate to admit it, but it's my 18th year in the district, and pretty much every year that I've been here, I have been involved in technology in some aspect, whether it was the district technology committee as a teacher or being the director of secondary ed for STEM, and now my current role. And this has always been a challenge, and it's not a slight against anybody who's ever worked in the tech department. It's just the technology we know evolves. It becomes more immersed in all that we do, and the systems become more intertwined and complex. And I think this is the time for us to vary the level of support that we're able to provide so that we can allow people like our network manager to really do that job of network management, which from some of the recent incidents we've had with power outages and such that has impacted phones and Wi-Fi, it really is important for us now and for the future.
Great, thank you very much. And just borrowing from what you mentioned earlier, that the industry standard is something like one tech for every 250 devices. If we have a 2,500 device order coming in, it sounds like this is just a drop in the bucket, but something that we absolutely have to do, especially with our increased reliance on software, I would imagine, to make remote school work. And since you mentioned this will be a tier 2 or someone that focuses on some of that tier 2 stuff, it sounds like this is an absolute must do, and I'm totally in favor of this.
Other questions from members of the school committee? Seeing no one, then I would accept a motion to approve the new tech position.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? This requires a
Second.
roll call vote. Mr. Oakley?
Aye.
Ms. Janess?
Aye.
Ms. Farley? Mr. Rowe?
Aye.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Dr. Gates.
Thank you, school committee, for your support, and Superintendent Lynch and Mrs. Hickey as well. And we're excited to add another member to our team. So thank you so much.
And I do think I want to put in a plug that if there's anyone out in the community who has this sort of level of experience and is looking for a new challenge to be on a real positive team to make some differences down the road for the students in Middleborough, that when this pops up, it'll be on schoolspring.com. And I think you're going to advertise elsewhere, Dr. Gates, Indeed, correct? Indeed.com and a few other places.
Yes, I'll be posting it through Indeed, as well as on an application called Handshake, which reaches out to all of the local colleges and universities through their career services department, because people with higher end technological skills aren't typically looking on SchoolSpring for a job. So we want to make sure that we broaden our reach. So thank you for highlighting that, Superintendent Lynch.
Hey, we need to, that's for sure. So my next item here is the special town meeting, and I just wanted to sort of update folks who were not at the meeting, and I thank those members who were at the meeting. We did get unanimous support for the purchase of 2 transit vans, additional special education vans. As you know, we want to stop outsourcing and bring as much business to our own drivers as we possibly can. Our drivers right now this year have less work because we're driving fewer students, because we have to drive fewer students because of social distancing. So trying to sort of build our fleet of vehicles into a newer, more modern set of vehicles that we can depend on. And this vote at town meeting did that, and we certainly appreciate the community of Middleborough for their ongoing support of the Middleborough Public Schools. And I say ongoing because this is my 6th year, and I think that the support has been between the new high school and the land to go to the back of the high school. And every time we as a school committee or we as a school community have gone to the town for budget, we have been approved. So I do thank and grateful for a very supportive community here in Middleborough, supportive of our schools, our students, our teachers, our staff, our administrators, and everyone. So thank you. And that concludes my formal report this evening, Mr. Chair. Unless anyone has questions.
Any questions for the superintendent before we move on? Seeing no one, we'll move on. Thank you, Brian. Next item on our agenda is the consent agenda. Before anyone makes a motion, I would like to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the Middleborough High School fundraiser, because I'd like to have a broader conversation about that, if that's okay with everybody. Great. Then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda except for the high school fundraiser?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Oakley?
Aye. Sorry.
Mr. Ness?
Aye.
Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Mr. Rowe?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. If no one objects now, I'm just going to bring up the middle school, or the high school fundraiser, because it's a separate piece. The reason I asked was because it came a little later than the agenda. And the second piece is I do have several questions about that. And Brian, is Paul available, I think, at this time to have a conversation?
Mr. Brannigan had a statewide student council meeting, but he said it was ending at 8 and he would be in the audience. So Dr. Gates, is Mr. Brannigan in the audience?
We moved.
I just sent Bran a text, and he will be with us in just a moment or two.
Okay. Thank you very much.
From 7 to 8, it would have been Josh Dyer, who's the new student council advisor up at the high school, working with Mr. Brannigan. That used to be Mr. Siciliano, but because of his responsibilities in the tech department, he has moved on from that position and given Josh Dyer an opportunity. And Josh Dyer was available till 8 o'clock, but he's in a graduate program and he had a class at 8 o'clock. So the baton was being handed to a seasoned school committee, student council rep in Mr. Brannigan. So I suppose we can wait a second for Mr. Brannigan.
That sounds good. Does anyone have anything? Mr. Brannigan, welcome to join us.
There he is.
Sorry.
One meeting to the next, Brand. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I didn't realize I was popping in the way I did. My apologies.
No problem at all. We thank you for popping in. Brian, I'm going to start off. Can you talk a little about what the student council proposal is? And I know I have a couple of questions, and so we didn't take it necessarily as consent agenda because of the times that we live in, right?
Right.
That's not to say I have a problem with it. It's just to say I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And we really deeply appreciate the fact that this may be a long shot, but we figured we would try. So the student council has been working to try to have some sort of an event to kind of, replace some of the things that we would be doing this time of year. And so they have been working on doing some research on doing a trunk or treat here at the high school. And they had done all of their research. They had communicated with the town. The Board of Health came here back in on Monday morning, and we went over kind of really what the plan was. And it's not a fundraiser. It's actually just a project, a service project. It would be free. So the idea would be is the fact that the students it would be in the brand new parking lot of the high school. As you drive in, it'd be off to the left. The students had counted the number of spots to create social distancing and working with the Board of Health. They made it known that we would do every other space. So it would accommodate if there would be the ability about 60 cars that could be there. And it would be students that would kind of fill their trunk filled with candy. We would limit it to 50 people, and that families would have to make a reservation. So it wouldn't just be allowing people to show up. So we know the fact that the outdoor space is about 100 people, and that the Board of Health had recommended that we would do no more than 50, knowing the fact that a family may say it's going to be a family of 4, and then the niece and nephew decide to come with them. And that everything would be done through Sign Up Genius, so that families would have to register on using that platform. We would then be able to limit it to half-hour sessions. We would start at 2:30 in the afternoon and would be over by 4:30. So it would be a half-hour increment. The families would walk in from one side of the parking lot, and they would make a loop around the new parking lot and come out the other side. So it wouldn't be going through the construction site. It would just be making a loop around where the fence is, and they would be coming right through out the other end. And the idea was the fact that we would have all the signage that would be there in terms of, and even in the communication of the Sign Up Genius, that it would be talking about if there's anyone not feeling well, please do not come. The Board of Health had chatted with us that it wouldn't allow the kids to go into the trunk to get the candy. It would be the student that would be handing the candy to the children, and that the students would be wearing gloves, people would be masked. as well. And we'd be asking our community to be coming in, especially for the adults in particular, that everyone be masked as well. So that just gives you a little bit of an overview, but I'd be happy to answer any of the questions that I potentially can even answer, to be honest.
So Paul, my question, I guess I'm going to make a question first and then a comment afterwards, which is the piece that concerns me, as you can imagine, I think for most of us, is the idea that trick or treat will be different this year.
Right.
And we talk about setting up RSVPs and setting up, you have to sign up beforehand. And you and I both know that never works out.
Right.
And so what happens when we get extra people there and go from there? So that was my major question, because I think you and I can both see there are plenty of families. You deal with it all the time. You have plenty of kids who never sign up for you, and all of a sudden you have more kids at a dinner or a dance than you're expecting, because it just works out that way.
Right. And that's you're right on with that, Mr. Young. We the executive board met this evening, and we talked through some of that pieces and realized the fact that this may be something that, albeit that we have kind of some parameter in place, that it may not even be feasible to do it. And so one of the things that they had shared with us that made some sense was that we know that for outside experiences, it was 100 people. So by going to no more than 50, we knew that we would be able to have a few of those extra people, but unless that they've actually registered, they would not be able to come in. So it couldn't be the walk-in. And that's really where it would be, that registration would be so imperative before. And then once we've hit the 50 mark, then the portal, that half-hour time slot would close. And they said the reasoning for it is that the fact that it may be the extra person that is coming with that particular family, but then what we would be doing is adding them or taking the name down as adding it to our spreadsheet for contact tracing if it was needed to be done.
And so then I guess my comment, Paul, would be, if we're going to, it sounds like we'll have some leeway there allowing people.
Right.
My comment would be that I think we both can see it could become overwhelmed, depending on in my mind, I would feel better about it if the people doing the check-in were adults rather than children, than high school students, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because I think a high school student would have a harder time turning somebody away and saying no than obviously a teacher or a council representative or a member of the faculty. Because that's just me, and I recognize there are other members of this board, so I open it up to everybody else for discussion too. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brannigan, I'm glad to see you're putting on this event. I know that Halloween has been a hot topic on the town message boards around here, and it's fantastic to see that the high school wants to keep doing something. My biggest concern would be working with the Board of Health, which you have done, which is fantastic. My question is, who is responsible for the contact tracing, so to speak, of if something does go amiss, and you have a family that maybe on the next day or two tests positive, and you have to trace that or such?
Right. So, great question, Mr. O. So with anything that we are doing, even on a day-to-day, that we have the ability, or we hope we have the ability in a moment, to be able to provide the Board of Health any information they need in terms of a guest list or a seating chart, whatever it may be. So I think one of the things that we would be doing is that if this is approved and we can move forward, at least to begin the planning, knowing the fact that things may change, day to day, that we would be kind of identifying the parking spaces that would be for the student who was assigned to that space. So we would be finding a way of saying that we would be able to tell and identify who were all the students that would be participating and donating their time as their car and their trunk. But then also the fact that with the sign-up genius, it is allowing us to be able to have a registration database as well. Because when they're registering, they're putting in all of their information. So that way we have the ability to do that. And then we would be holding on to that information so that if in the event that it was needed, that then the Board of Health would be able to access that information very quickly.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Paul, I just have one other question, if
Please.
I can. Again, going to the idea of a backup and concern about that, has there been any thought to put, I obviously know you have no control over other buildings, and I know high school students want to do things in the high school. It's just a question of, has there been any thought of, for example, using the Nichols because of the long driveway? So if there was a backup, the backup would not be on 28 as opposed to the long driveway of the Nichols.
Yeah, we haven't, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman, we didn't even consider that because we are only allowing people to come onto the campus who have a reservation. So they wouldn't be allowed to walk in. So we thought that with the limiting of 50 people coming in, the guests, the students who would be participating, our volunteer base, would all be parked in that new parking lot, besides the few of us that would be maybe parked in some of the dirt spaces or whatever. But for the families that would be coming, they would be pre-registering. So we thought that with the gym parking lot and then the front parking areas, that they would be able to make their way right over to the new space. But it's something we could certainly consider if we needed to, or the committee felt that would be the better option to do. We just thought that that new parking lot, it has the ending point because of the construction fence. So to allow a family to make a loop right around the parking lot and then leave the other side. Or leave the way they came in, but separated with tables. That was the one thing the Board of Health said. They didn't want people passing each other really closely. So we'd be able to use, say, the one with the yellow line that separates the traffic coming in and out. Use one side for in and use the other side for out.
I guess if related to that, then I'll throw out to Paul that if they're not going to be allowed on campus, that they don't have a reservation, then the potential exists even more for the backup on 28, because you're going to have to register them before they come into. I get you're probably using the driveway, but you know what I'm saying. It just becomes a backing up situation, and that would concern me. Brian, I saw you.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I just think maybe there might be a little bit of a misconception. These folks are going to come in and park over by the gym, and they're going to walk. This is a walking parade, correct, Mr. Brennan?
Yes.
They're walking past the trunks, much like you would in a sidewalk, saying trick or treat, for moments at a time, and going past like you would on a sidewalk, fully masked, socially distanced, and keep these families moving in a circular motion. Then they come in, they go around the parking lot, they walk out, and they're gone. So it's not a drive-through or drive-by. Okay, I just want to clarify that because I thought that's where you were going.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch, for that clarification. Sorry if I wasn't clear on that. I'm sorry.
Well, that's fine, Paul. Does anyone else have a question? Ms. Farley, did you have your hand up? I apologize if I missed it. Okay, no problem. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Open.
I was just wondering, I feel like Mr. Rowe mentioned, I think there's a definite kind of like hunger for this type of activity in the town. You can tell because there's kind of a new post every day about, are we trick-or-treating? And I think something like this would be very popular. And I also think it's great, and I think we should do it. But I wonder, what is the capacity of that parking lot? Because if each family stays for, even 10 minutes, just making their way around, I feel like we are out on 28.
So the parking lot where we would be using has 130 spaces. So if you had each of the student cars around the perimeter, it'd be about 60 to 65 cars we could do. When you look at the rest of the parking lot, from the high school side to the gym side, that there's easily well over, especially on the gym side of the parking lot, there's about 100 spaces or so between the curve going into the gym as well as the gym parking lot itself. So we thought that when you're having only 50 people allowed in at a time, knowing the fact that 50 families would potentially be maybe 75 people because of the extra people they may end up bringing, because that niece or that nephew or that neighbor, whatever it may be. But we're only would be anticipating that if you looked at that number 50, it may just be that 50 cars at a time, which would be very easy to park on that side. To give you some context, our student parking lot right now is that new parking lot. and that in some in the gym as well. But for the most part, that student parking lot, that new parking lot is for student parking only. The rest of the parking lot is for faculty and staff, and we're able to fit everybody nicely. So, so I think we'd be all set there, Mr. Oakley, on that front.
Okay, and sorry, I didn't mean to butt my nose in. I know you've got all the details taken care of. I just think it's going to be very popular, and I'm excited that you're doing it. And I would kind of second the idea of the nickels, but I have total and complete faith in your planning group to make the right decision.
Paul, when you said they're going in half-hour interviews, can you give us sort of the outline of this starts at X, next cohort comes at, that kind of thing?
Right. Let me just grab. I have it right here. So the first group would come in at 2:30, and then it would be from 2:30 to 3, 3 to 3:30, 3:30 to 4, and 4 to 4:30. So when they go into the Sign Up Genius, they would have to then make their reservation, and they would sign up. And as soon as that we've hit that 50 mark, it would end up it would be closed, and then that reservation would no longer be open. So if a family said they wanted to go at 2:30, they would go at 2:30 in the afternoon. We would know that it would probably take them just about that half hour, if not longer, because they would be making their way through collecting their candy. And as soon as they've made the round the perimeter, they would exit and they get back to their car and they would be leaving. There'd be no other activity. There's nothing else that would be going on campus. So once that event is closed for that half hour, then the only reservations people could be making is for any of the open times that are there. So that Sign Up Genius, it's almost works like if you were having a gathering where you needed to have 20 people bring a baked good. Once those 20 items are filled, it goes on to something else. They would have to bring a drink, or they'd have to bring an entree or something. So we're kind of using the same model for this trunk or treat, that once those spaces are filled, that reservation time closes. So they're in half-hour intervals.
And do you think, for example, at the 2:30, that you could get families in and out before the next families arrived at 3 o'clock?
Yeah, we really felt that we could, Mr. Young, because as we said, there's no event that's happening. They're making their way through. They would be given the candy by the students, and then they'd be making their way out at the other side of the parking lot. So, and then we would have the ability for us to help with the kind of traffic flow because remember, the traffic pattern is one way. So when they're leaving, the one area that we would be really working with is just the crossing of families that are coming into the new parking lot, and those people that are coming out, with the traffic that would be coming around the side of the building between the two schools, making their way out. So we think from a traffic piece, that getting the people in and out, we would probably be okay. We would be working with our school resource officer, Sergeant Graham, to see if that he could help with the detail that day, just so that we had the ability of that presence there just for a traffic flow. And of course, we would have a custodian on site that day as well for those hours.
And Brian, a question came up. Is it 50 families or 50 individuals?
It seemed to be that it would be probably 50 families, but it would be, in terms of that 50, it would be when they sign up for the entrance, it would be asking them to sign up it would actually be 50 individuals. I'm sorry. It's 50 individuals. So if a family of 4 signed up, it would be that family of 4. That's 4 out of the 50. But what we know is the fact that, and this is really where that the Board of Health had given us this advisement, is the fact that if I came with my 2 nieces and I'm bringing 3 people, it's me and my 2 nieces. But then I wanted to bring, I'm going to bring my nephews as well, those 2 nephews. Now I'm coming in with 5. So even though I've registered with my family of 4, that I know the fact that just by happenstance, I'm going to bring those 2 extra with me to go through, that allows for us to make sure we're not going over that number 100.
Okay. I guess I'm a little concerned about the time frame, Paul.
Okay.
In the sense that I don't think that you can't do it, and I agree with both Greg and Rich that it can happen.
Yep.
I think I would feel more comfortable if it was spaced out a little more, because I think what you forget is, while there's nothing else to do, you still have essentially kids in costumes that are going to want to show off to each other. They're going to want to have conversations with their friends. They're going to want to have conversations with other families that they haven't seen. And I don't see that getting out as being as easy as you might think it is.
Right.
That's
That
all.
was, and to speak to that, that was one of the things that the Board of Health had really stressed with us, is the fact that we need to make sure we have people there that are keeping people moving, that it's not a old home week kind of figuring out and seeing people. It's really about keeping them moving. And that was one of the conversations we had about ensuring the fact that when they're making their way, that they're not congregating and that they're moving through the process and making their way. But I do respect exactly what you're saying, because it's hard to maybe control that in all variables. So.
And Paul, just a quick question related to numbers. I know what a typical event with the student council is. How many adults do you see as being there to chaperone an event like this, given everything?
Yeah, so I know the fact that with our student council advisors that we anticipate they would be there. I think what we were going to do is wait to see what happened tonight and then begin to mobilize actually that support of people that would be there. I do think that we would end up having our administrators there, and then the support staff that would be there as well. So I think in terms of people coming, because it's a short amount of time, that we're not doing something in the evening and it's really done in the prime of the afternoon, that it may end up being that we would have the support people that would be there. But to be honest, I don't have that list in an immediate, because we wanted to kind of make sure that it was supported. And please hear me, I do respect if it's not something that you feel comfortable with doing, and the executive board knows that too. So they knew going into tonight that, and they would respect that decision too.
No, I appreciate this is maybe a little more conversation than we've had, Paul, around particular pieces, but I appreciate you doing this. And I think it's, I want to emphasize more than anything else, I don't think that you can't do it. I don't think that students can't do it. But what I believe is I just have some questions that need to be answered like everybody else. And I appreciate your answers. And I know, Meg, you had your hand up, so go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I love this. I have 2 little ones, so trick or treat is like one of our favorite things to do. So I would definitely support this. But I like Mr. Chair, I definitely have the concerns with the times. Just getting my kids in and out of the car is going to take me 20 minutes.
Okay.
So then that leaves us 10 minutes to kind of circulate, and we keep them moving just in general, because otherwise we'll be there forever. But I have some concerns over the time as well. Okay. So I think maybe adding like 10 minutes in between, and in that way, not only for families, but for the kids that are there, if they want to go, if they need to go in and run to the bathroom, if they want to go get a sweatshirt out of their car, there's time for them to do that too. So it kind of gives them a little bit of a break.
Okay.
I have a concern about that too, but I do really like this and I do support it.
Okay. Thank you, Meg, for that.
Mr. Rowe, go right
ahead. Through you, Mr. Chair, I was like thinking as Meg, as I was calculating the time it would take to get my 2 little ones in and out, and getting them in and out of the car would definitely be the longest part. So my thought on this was also, Mr. Brannigan, you were a master planner. I have seen many of your events at Middleborough and elsewhere go stunningly smoothly, but I was just wondering if you would consider building in a evaluation block, like after that first group comes through and you see how it works, having a half hour or so to kind of reevaluate or regroup, and that way you can make changes in between if you need to, rather than struggle with one group coming in as you're trying to make changes.
Right. So, and we certainly could. I mean, I think when we were looking at the time frame of the 2 hours, it was to really just maximize that time. But I think as we're having this conversation, I certainly think it could be a longer period of time with those buffers in between, that we're able to regroup, we're able to replenish, we're able to make sure that our cars are set and all of that. And so I think we can certainly build in the time. I mean, there's not a lot going on these days, so I think we could certainly build in that time frame to have the buffer, as Mrs. Jeunesse said, in regards to just the transitions in and out and being mindful of that, but then also being able to make sure as a wave has left that we're making sure that we're ready for the next wave. And so I think one thing that we've been able to do at the high school, because of our facilities director, Mr. Hutchinson, is that we have markers all along the front of the building that are separated by 6 feet, so that it would allow for families that maybe are queuing to come in, that they would be able to be socially distanced and physically distanced along the property. So make sure the fact that we're not having these big a crowd mobbed around the entrance to the trunk or treat as well. So what I can do is go back to the student council, and we can kind of remodify maybe those times, and then when we share out that the advertisement for the reservations, that will allow for them to be able to have a little bit of some buffers within that as well.
Teresa, did you have a question? I saw your hand up, so I want to make sure that I missed it.
I think it kind of came in through the comments, but I had a similar question. Paul, you mentioned, it sounded like I heard you say 65 cars. I may have misheard, but I know that we can only have up to 100 people total. So you would be looking at just making sure that your volunteers between your students and your adult chaperones would not be more than 50, correct?
Right. So that is the interesting part of this, which is that the 100 people are the guests. That a volunteer, from what we were kind of shared through our meeting with the Board of Health, was that they don't count in that number. So that, and when we questioned it, it became that if they're in their masks and we have gloves for them, and the fact that we're the ones handing the candy to the kids, that it's really about the crowd of people that would be moving through the event.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Oakley, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed this. So are we talking this would be the Friday before Halloween?
No, it would be the
right?
Halloween. It would be Halloween itself, the 31st.
Oh, okay. So that's what, Saturday? Yeah. I was just going to say I'd be happy to volunteer. I'm sure that we have a ton of people around town that would also be happy to help. So if you need help shooing people out of the parking lot to get the next group in, I'm happy to volunteer.
We are going to be limiting. We did have a conversation tonight about just a mindfulness of limiting the numbers of students at a car. So just I think our ability to kind of organize all of that is important as well. And that was part of our conversation tonight, is that if it is approved, what would that look like? And so, would it be 2 people at a car? Would it be 4 people at a car? Just to make sure the fact that there's just that spacing on our end as well, that as you have a student or students at their car giving out candy, that they themselves are being mindful of their own space between each other.
So does anyone else have any other questions? So Paul, if it's okay with you, while we normally approve an application, what I would prefer to do is just approve the concept, so we can give you a lot broader leeway. And I do that for 2 reasons. One, obviously, you deciding what timeframes you might think you need. And I think the other thing too is, the potential, you talked about like a 2-hour window, but if you get like 500 or 600 kids wanting to sign up for this, I think maybe you should be allowed to expand it a little bit. And also the other thing is, we both know there are other groups in school that have to do these service protocols. And so if you needed extra help or wanted to expand, it didn't just have to be the group. It could be a whole wide variety of other people who could get involved. Clearly, all doing the social distance parameters that we discussed and everything we discussed. But I can see the potential. There's some of us who brought their kids to trunk or treat in the past, and on good, Friday or Saturday night when trunk or treat has existed, that place has been packed and didn't have to worry about social distancing or anything like that. So I can imagine that if you put it out there, you may get more people who are interested in showing up than even you might imagine, Paul.
Okay.
So if that's okay with the committee,
Absolutely.
I would entertain a motion to allow the event, but sort of give Mr. Brannigan leeway. And Paul, that leeway is also that if you feel you need to cancel the event because it just can't happen, it has to go that way too. So I'll accept a motion for that if that's okay.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Oakley?
Aye.
Ms. Janess?
Aye.
Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Mr. Rowe? The chair votes
Aye.
aye. And we thank the student council, Paul, for stepping up and making this, a service to our community, because I think a lot of kids could use a fun Halloween this time of year. So we really appreciate it. And I agree with Rich. If you need help, Paul, I'm going to be around that day, so I'll be more than happy to help out
Great.
too.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. And I know they'll be excited to get to work on a project and to make something happen for our community. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And that finishes the consent agenda, if I'm correct. And it moves us on to our next piece, which is the superintendent's evaluation. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And it won't let me share. Oh, wait, now I found it. There we go. So a couple of things beforehand that I just want to go with. I put it out to the committee and I wanted people to know it. I'm going to go over the superintendent's evaluation. The superintendent's evaluation is a document we create. This is state created, but we put together some point in April. This year we extended a little to May. We do it before elections so that the individual school committee members who are on the committee have the opportunity to make the recommendation. And then the other piece is, unlike most things that go on in the school committee, this is a personnel matter. The superintendent and the town manager are the only two people whose review are done in public session. But even though they are done in public session, they are a personnel matter. And so I have to adhere to certain personnel pieces. And one of them is I can't take comments from the audience about the superintendent's agenda in this form. You will see it. We have to send this to the state, and then we go from there. But so just everyone knows, people participated in the superintendent's evaluation except for Ms. Farley because she was not on the board at that time. So the superintendent's evaluation is broken down into a couple of different areas. The first area is superintendent's performance goals. The school committee had given the superintendent 5 performance goals. You don't see the full screen on mine, and I don't know why, but because of COVID, a lot of these goals were going to continue anyways, but also there was some ways that they couldn't continue. And so in all the superintendent's goals, he either made significant progress or some progress. And so to outline those goals, the first was to monitor and evaluate the grant-funded Mass STEM Project Lead the Way grant program, as well as STF math program. That made significant progress. The second was to coordinate, develop, manage, and implement transition to the new Middleborough High School. As you can imagine, that's made significant progress, but hasn't been achieved because we haven't moved there yet. The third goal was coordinated and collaborative professional development with the administrative team on social and emotional learning within the Middleborough schools. That made significant progress. And these are all based upon the school committee's information. The next goal was to evaluate, monitor, and maximize the current before and after school program. As you can imagine, during that fiscal year, the before and after school program had to end because of COVID, but that did make some progress. The other piece is the student learning goal, which was to evaluate the current writing instruction programs within the Middleborough School District as to their effectiveness, and develop recommendations as to the future of writing programs within the district. That made some progress also. The next item is, I just want to go to the top so people can see how it's graded. The superintendent's performance areas are graded unsatisfactory, needs performance, needs improvement, proficient, and exemplary. So when we go through the individual areas, in every area, the superintendent got either proficient or exemplary. The areas in which for instructional leadership, under curriculum and instruction, the superintendent got proficient. Under assessment, he got exceeds. Evaluation, he got proficient, along with data-informed decision-making. Student learning is also on here, but it does not have an overall corresponding description. Overall, for the instructional leadership piece, Brian received a proficient. And under comments, it said Brian places a strong emphasis on instructional leadership. He is constantly having his teamwork and dialogue on teamwork and dialogue on ways to develop stronger curriculum and better programs for our students. The superintendent worked hard to ensure the needs of our students have been met during the pandemic, beginning with technology and then through changes in student learning. He bases decisions on data and evaluation of programming. He has high expectations of administrators and their ability to make informed decisions throughout our school system. For the rating on management and operations, and this is an area where Brian does extraordinarily well. For environment, he rated as exceeds. For human resources management and development, he rated as exceeds. For scheduling management and information systems, he rated proficient. For law, ethics, and policy, fiscal systems, he rated exceeds. And the overall rating was for management operations was exceeds. And under comments, it said, Brian is very strong in this area. He is an exceptional leader who has a firm understanding of our community. The superintendent did an amazing job guiding the schools through the variety of issues. The pandemic caused a variety of issues that required the school to constantly adapt and change. Brian was able to work with his team and clear most of the hurdles encountered. One of the key issues was funding for the FY 2021 year. The town was forced to make significant cuts to deal with diminishing revenue from the state. The superintendent, along with his business manager, the budget subcommittee, and the town manager, were able to formulate a plan that did not create massive layoffs and budget cuts. We believe this was based upon his strong working relationship with the town side of government. Brian handles ongoing personnel issues very well. He has a talent to get out ahead of problems and try to find amicable solutions to complex problems. He has a strong grasp of legal issues and is willing to help when needed to deal with problems. Under the area of family and community engagement, under engagement, Brian ranked proficient. Under sharing responsibility, communication, and family concerns, he rated exemplary. It said Brian works hard to keep the entire school community informed and in the loop. With the school committee, he constantly sends updates through email in the form of updates in his Friday Flash. He has a strong working relationship with the chairman of the board and ensures constant conversation about ongoing issues. Brian keeps the staff informed through his updated newsletters and communication. He has regularly met with the union representatives to ensure they hear a unified message from the administration. He has the ability to handle complex issues before they become problematic for our district. The superintendent strives hard to reach out to the parents and students to ensure their voices are heard. He regularly attends school functions to establish a presence and get to know the school community. He updates family through detailed letters and notices outlining what is happening in the school. In addition to all these points, Brian has been managing the district through a pandemic. Through his engagement with families, he has been open about changing priorities to meet the needs of school families during the crisis. Brian is a strong leader for our district and our community. Under each of these things, you will see that I put, please see additional examples attached. Historically, Brian has provided to the school committee a list of accomplishments throughout the school year because we requested it. So when we look at our evaluation forms, we can match certain things with certain areas. It dawned on me this year that we should attach that piece to the evaluation because it makes sense. And it also shows additional pieces, not just in sort of an overall picture. The next performance area was professional culture. Under commitment to high standards, Brian received an exemplary. Under cultural proficiency, he received a proficient. Under communication, he received an exemplary. Under continuous learning, he received a proficient. Under shared vision, he received a exemplary, and under management complex, he received an exemplary. The overall rating, you'll see the 2 X's because he came in between the two. And so while I'm supposed to put just 1, I don't like to do that, and I won't do that, and haven't in the past. And no one from the state has yelled at me. I would point out that Brian works hard to create a culture that makes the community proud. He leads by example and clearly loves this town and school system. The end of the year was both difficult and stressful. Brian worked hard to create an environment in which students could learn, staff could teach, and administration could lead. Brian tries to avoid conflict and work out solutions prior to becoming larger problems. When issues arise, Brian addresses them head on and will make decisions on what is the best interest of the schools. He is willing to address conflict and make changes when he feels necessary. A clear example is the audit of the technology department and his realigning the program to better fit the needs of Middleborough. Brian is a strong leader who works to make Middleborough school system a top-notch organization. And then if you go to the top, it sort of gives an overall. And again, under the overall performance, if you look at the pieces, Brian, there were 4 category areas there. In 2, he rated proficient. In 2, he rated exemplary. It's in between. And again, I put both there because that's where he lies, and it doesn't allow me to. And again, no one's complained from the state, so I'm going to do that. And the overall comments are there, and I know Brian's seen them. I'm going to figure out how to stop sharing my screen and go back to everybody. But I would first like to offer Brian a chance to comment on the evaluation. You're muted, Brian, I believe. Or I can't hear you.
Luckily, that's not part of the evaluation yet. I just would like to thank the committee and those members who contributed to this evaluation. And as I said from the get-go and have said from the get-go, when I started building my goals with the subcommittee, the evaluation subcommittee, it's my goal to improve the school system in as many ways as I can. And I dedicated to doing that and will do anything I can to do that. As you know, my own children have been in the system and continue to be in the system, and it means a great deal. This is my hometown. And I will continue to work hard, and I thank you for your positive evaluation, and wherever there are concerns, as I tell you in each Friday communication, if you ever have any comments, suggestions, or concerns, or anything to bring to my attention, you do, and I appreciate that, and I think that's important. So I think it's important to have an open, collaborative, and honest relationship with the school committee and myself, and with the community and the school system. So I'll continue to do that until I'm told otherwise. So I thank you all very much, and like I said, I'm always proud to be the superintendent of schools in Middleborough. I have been from day one. I think you had that sense. If those of you around for the interview process when I first took the job, I was excited to take the job. It was the dream job of a lifetime, and I do appreciate the opportunity to continue on as your superintendent. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the committee.
Does any member of the commission wish to add anything? Ms. Farley, please go right ahead.
Thank you. So clearly this is my first go at this, and I wasn't part of that actual process, but I have been a parent for many years in this district. And one thing that I've always appreciated about you, Mr. Lynch, is your willingness to hear anything, any concerns from a parent. So from that perspective, I appreciate that from you. You and I have spoken several times through the years, and now I'm on a different side of this piece. But as a parent, I do thank you, and I appreciate your time as always.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to make any comment? Mr. Oak?
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one of the points one of the comments that was in the evaluation. And I think obviously this year has just been very weird and different. So it's almost like a lot of those pieces that the evaluation contained are of course important, but I think the one that's the most important is just that you were at the helm, piloting us through this crazy storm. And I certainly appreciate that. And I think if you were a different person, or if another person was in this role, I don't know if we could expect the same level of success that we've had. So for that reason, I just really appreciate you being here, and I'm sure the whole community agrees.
Thank you, Mr. Oakley.
Mr. Rowe, you had your hand up.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, I just want to echo what Mr. Oakley said. This COVID crisis was totally unexpected, and any administrator who navigated through this put in more hours, effort, time, and thought into something that they were fingers crossed hoping would work. And as we've seen so far, things in Middleborough are going well, and there are plans to deal with every possible situation. So well done, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. And again, I give credit to a collaborative team of administrators who really worked their tails off to make this work. And I always defer to them, and I will continue to defer to them, because without them, I'm really nothing. And I do appreciate the work of folks like Dr. Gates stepping in to do the StreamYard, just an example, just to give Sean a night off because he's worked so hard, and the communications director and all of those things, and Carolyn Lyons and her work, and Sarah Hickey and her work, and all the principals and their work, and the assistant principals and the SPED facilitators. And it's just a team of administrators that to me put it all together. And it wasn't without its challenges. You all know that, and it, we went back and forth in a lot of cases, but that collaborative team is so important, and I wouldn't even be here without them. So I thank them very much.
Mr. Ness, you had your hand up, so please go right ahead.
Thank you. I was just going to say that I think the leaders in our schools and why everything has been so successful when we've come back, given the pandemic, that's all due to your leadership, that you set the tone. And so everyone follows you and everyone follows the hard work that you do for the school. So I'm definitely appreciative of that.
Thank you, Mr. Ness.
I would also, what everyone said, Brian, I think the biggest thing to look at too is just sort of over the course of the year, and it has nothing, what has to do with the pandemic, but it doesn't, which is we are the only district around us that when the budget crisis hit, and it hit everyone, that administration didn't lose their mind and lay off loads and loads of teachers just to say this is what it would do. Because I think we really looked at what we could do to change the problem. And we also looked at the impact that would have on administrators if we allowed that kind of thing to go on. And so that's really from your leadership. And that's an important piece. So I thank you for that.
Well, as you know, we worked hard with the association to try to work with them to try to hold off decision making and go beyond the parameters of the contract so that we could get a better sense from the town exactly where we were financially. So there's nothing in this world that's worse than getting a pink slip and getting a notice that your job has been eliminated, or you may not have work next year in a district that you have worked at or developed in and loved. And so we try to avoid that at all costs, but I do appreciate that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments or concerns? With that, then the chair would entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's evaluation as presented tonight.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Oakley?
Aye.
Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Mr. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Janess?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The chair also needs to mention to the committee that in accordance with the superintendent's contract, because he did get a good evaluation, at the next meeting, I will bring up his raise. His raise would be retroactive to July 1st. We usually take that up in separate nights, but I make mention of that because that pertains to his contract. The last thing I'll say about this matter is this. I was here when we did the superintendent search, and one of the things I got to do was have a conversation with the community beforehand about what they wanted to see in the next superintendent. The thing that always struck me was when I went to the high school and met with high school students, one young lady, whom I apologize and I don't even know her name, stood up and asked me pointedly that I please find a superintendent who wanted to be the superintendent of Middleborough and just didn't want to be superintendent. I think that has always held with me. And Brian, I can't emphasize enough that we made the right choice because we truly found a person who wanted to be the superintendent of Middleborough. So thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. I do appreciate it.
And with that, there is no other business that I see before me. Does anyone else have anything they want to bring up? Seeing no one, Chair will entertain. Oh, Mr. Lynch, please go right ahead.
Here, I did want to make mention of the fact that we had a conversation about the therapy dog, and we had talked about the fact that even though it's not a purchase, that the needs group does take donations, and they use a roundabout number, about $8,000, because that's what it costs to raise and train one of these dogs. And McLean Hospital came forward and donated the $8,000 so that we could get a therapy dog. So I do want to appreciate all the collaborative work we've done with McLean through the years and the money they've donated to the school department in the form of grants. But this was a tremendous outpouring for a therapy dog that they clearly recognize as something that will bring value to the Middleborough Public Schools. So I just wanted to mention that, Mr. Chair.
And we should also mention that when McLean came to Middleborough, there was some concern about McLean coming to Middleborough. And I will say this, as I have said this in the past, over and over again, they've been fantastic neighbors to the town, especially to the school system. But I know across the board, for example, they have also funded our program with the Council on Aging for elder citizens who are taking care of grandchildren or relatives' children, to have groups and discussions about that. Time and time again, they step up, and we really appreciate what they do. Right.
And Mr. Chair, for the past 3 or 4 years, and they continue to, they fund the interface referral service for any member of the community, whether they're a public school person or not, or whether they have any school children at all. It's for any member of the committee that is having any type of an issue and that needs some assistance in terms of a referral. So thank you again to McLean.
Thank you, everybody. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Before we end, our next meeting will be November 12th. So happy Veterans Day to the veterans out there. It requires a roll call. Mr. Oakley?
Aye.
Ms. Farley?
Aye.
Mr. Rowe?
Aye.
Ms. Janess?
Aye.
The chair votes aye, and we look forward to seeing everybody on November 12th. Thank you.